Do you guys ever think about the concept of digging into the infinite? Um, I guess what I mean by that is that the infinite is all around us. Like, I think, at least from my observations of the universe as I experience it, I can't really speak for anyone else's universe, but my observations of what I've experienced is that, at least with this human experience, as humans, we have the ability to dig into the infinite. And I guess what I mean by that is we could take any subject or any activity or any conversation or any writing, or you keep going. For me, it's art. So for me, I would say any drawing, and you can dig into it and dig into it and dig into it and just keep, like, let's say you draw the same drawing over and over again for 10 years of your life. Each time you draw the drawing, you're going to get something different out of it, and it's going to be different no matter what. Even if you're trying to copy your drawing or do the exact same methodology or retrace the same steps or trace it, tracing, you end up with a different drawing, no matter what you do, it's going to be a different experience. And so the more you focus on something and the more you dig into it, the more layers you're going to find, because you basically, for me, when I'm drawing, I'm having a conversation with the drawing, and well, it's not like a verbal conversation, but it's a visual conversation, and it's all depending on, my mood and what I'm thinking about. And, every time I sit down to draw, it's like another step on this journey into the infinite of drawing. And, I don't know, I feel like it's very interesting. And, when I reached a certain level of drawing and a certain level of thought and drawing, I started to be able to look at everything and be like, oh, this is just like, I'm still drawing, like I am making a sandwich. Well, actually what I'm doing is making a drawing, and I can apply the same things like composition and shapes and organization and flavors, like I guess with food there's flavors, which I guess you could apply that to drawing, but it's not necessarily a word you would normally apply to drawing. And, or driving a car, you start to like learn the rules of the road. And, when you start out, you're all about like, oh, these are the rules and I don't want to make a mistake. And then at some point you get comfortable and you're like, let's go a little faster, let's take this turn a little tighter, and then, for me at least, at some point, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I could be risking people's lives. And with driving, at least, I always come back to like, oh, well, how can I infinitely concentrate on being a safer driver or making the road a safer place? So, but I can apply the same things from drawing. Like, one of the biggest things is growing up, I had always had huge respect for musicians, and I grew up with a lot of really talented people who could really, really kind of learn the ins and outs of playing music, like on guitar or drums or singing or whatever. And I was always really envious of this ability, because I feel like, drawing is one thing, but music is like I even these days I have trouble listening to music because it's such a direct line into feelings, and it's like, in some way music is incredible, if done right, can be incredibly manipulative And this current time, I don't listen to much music because I don't feel like being manipulated, I guess, is my main reason. And I find that I am, if I don't listen to music, it's much easier for me to kind of control my own destiny, which I know might not make much sense, but I'm somebody who's very easily influenced by things around me. I can watch a movie and that'll affect my thought for like that week, or the next few days or whatever. Or I can be hanging out with someone and a certain song comes on, and then like the mood of the hangout changes, and it's not because anything mentally or physically has changed between the people involved in the conversation. It's because this song creates such a mood that it like forces this narrative on things. And at some point I was starting to feel very controlled by things like music. Anyway, that's a huge tangent, and maybe I'll do a whole thing on that later. But to get back to music, so I grew up not playing music, but being surrounded by musicians and really being in awe at what they were doing. And at some point, I was invited to be in a band because I had bought a theremin, which I was just using as a noise-making device. And as soon as you have a theremin, people are like, oh, this guy's got a theremin, he should be in our band. And so I became the weird noise guy in the band. But at some point in my drawing, I started applying like what I learned about composition and space and narrative and other things. And I started finding that even though I didn't know what the notes were and what I didn't really know what I was doing, I could apply the same thoughts I have while drawing to music. And I would end up making things and making compositions that sounded good, even though, they were accidental compositions. I somehow was able to translate that over from drawing to sound. And anyway, I guess what I'm saying is it's interesting how connected everything is, and how you can look into something and you can look into that forever. Like there are people who study, one Civil War battle their entire life, and they just spend time with it, and the further into it they get, probably the deeper amount of satisfaction they get from studying it. At some point everything becomes about nuance, and then those nuances have nuances, and then those nuances have nuances of nuances, and it just keeps going into and deeper and deeper into itself. And I guess when I started out this conversation, before I went on a tangent, appropriately so, of course, is that, you can do anything and dig into anything, and there's always going to be more to explore and further plumbs to depth. And I think, even though this would be a bummer, but if the time ever arose where I couldn't draw again, I'm pretty sure I could find other things to be fascinated by and interested in, and to dig as deep as possible into, I don't know. So I think at some point you want to kind of choose what you're going to dig into, and that's when things start to become important. Anyway, that's it for today. Maybe I'll dig more into this later.